y'all. Hey, it's me, Courtney, Pivot's Queen, and I have been trying to get this chart markup to you guys for so long. I actually meant to record this on Sunday. It's currently Tuesday, and this is actually my second time recording this. I recorded a whole video, and turns out my headphones were still on, so my laptop connected to my headphones and the audio on my headphones is awful. Um, and I was like, okay, I'm just gonna re-record it. So I'm gonna quickly try to re-go over everything I talked about. Hopefully, I cover all the same points that I did. But I just want to explain EU. I want to talk about it. I know I was looking for buys last week. I thought I was looking for buys last week. Price ended up selling. I ended up selling. I reacted to the market. I just followed market structure. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to go back close to where we started the recording from last week, kind of pick back up from there and step by everything that happened. I want to note, I do not edit these videos. These videos are raw. There is background noise. Actually, I'm gonna try to limit some of the background noise, but some is unpreventable. I'm at my mom's house. There's kids running around everywhere. They might run down here. That's what happened last time. They ran down here. So I went upstairs to record the video and it was like I did that for nothing. So if they run through, I apologize. I'll try to like pause it so they won't be so loud. But we're gonna get this thing done. We're gonna quickly go through this so that way you guys can be set up for the next move. All right. So started last week. I noticed that price had broken, retested my 1 hour trend line to the upside, and then there was also a break of my 4 hour zone. So I did draw a little zone here to represent the last high that the market had made. And my thought process was like, okay, if price breaks above this high, we could get a continuation. I was even looking for like a little short move to the next zone. But if price breaks my trend line to the downside, and it breaks below my 4 hour zone again, then I was going to look for sales just back down to this blue zone and see what happens from there. I think that I did mention that I was expecting price to pull back a little bit anyway. So I was basically essentially waiting for the pullback to happen or the push to happen. I was waiting for either or. Um, and then I think that there was also, yes, and there's a little bearish divergence in here. Hold on. Get my arrow here, and just so you can see this high compared to this high, it really looks like price is moving flat here, but it's actually making higher highs and over here. So they're doing different things. If the RSI is doing something different than the chart, then it is divergence. So there was some bearish divergence in there as well. So once I was like, okay, if I get this trend line break that zone, I'm gonna go ahead and get in for that sell. So I'm gonna let this play out. And it looks like price ended up respecting that zone. We got that trend line break. Um, I did enter somewhere in this area a stop loss above the last highs, and this was my target. So I got into that sell, I think like Monday afternoon, right before market close. And I let that trade sit. We could see we got that break below the zone. If you didn't get in, where I got in or at the break, you could always get in at the retest, and we can see price is retesting that area as well. It's always best to get in on the retest. It's the safer bet. Um, okay, so somewhere in here that evening, before bed, so before that candle happened, somewhere here, um, I partialed, and I meant to move my stop loss to break even. I didn't, so that was a human error. But typically, at bedtime or before I go to bed, I like to partial close, move stop loss to break even for any trades that I'm still in. Because if I get taken out, I could always look for like another entry the next day. So I partial, but I think I didn't move my stop loss to break even. But then I also drew another trend line. And I was like, okay, if price ends up breaking this trend line to the upside, then I'll go ahead and get out of my sells, start looking for those buy entries. Just remember, buy was what I was looking for anyway. So boom, price did push a little bit, but didn't quite make it to my take profit. Ended up pushing up, right? This happened in my sleep. So I was sleeping, all this happened. This is like 2 a.m. EST. This is more like 5 a.m. EST. So when I woke up, price was like already here. So I went ahead and closed whatever trades I was still holding for the sell. I wasn't too bummed about any like little loss that I had. It was very minimal, if any, because it was basically at entry. So it was like a slight profit slash break even type of trade. Um, so that was cool, but the buy was what I was waiting for. I had my trend line break. I also got some divergence confirmation as well. We could see that price made a lower low here, but on the RSI, if I could get those to move, they're like equal lows. Let me just, there we go. Right, so it looks a little different, not necessarily making like lower lows. So I had my divergence there as well. Just so I could take this off. This is my clean chart, so I try really hard to keep it clean. So if you see me just deleting stuff after we talked about it, it's just because this is my clean chart, and I try to keep this essentially just zones and trend lines, and then everything else goes on my messy chart, which is very messy because it has everything else. All right, so I had my bullish divergence. Trend line break. Price is actually breaking above a major zone, so that's confirmation as well. But I didn't want to just hop in, right? You don't want to hop in the middle of the move because you don't know if this is done. You don't know how far it's going to go. You can't just get in and expect price to continue. You always want to wait on price to pull back, especially in the middle. Now I do enter on breaks. So like trend line breaks, if I was awake for this, I would have went ahead and entered, but that's just because the type of trader I am. But what I teach and what I preach is wait on the break and retest. And I waited on the break and retest for a long time before I started just entering on the break. But break and retest is your friend. But I missed the break, so I was like, okay, I'm gonna just wait for price to pull back. And that's when I'll get my entry. So I waited for price to kind of push up and start forming some type of pullback. So I could draw my fifth. So I waited for price to kind of push up, pull back. I drew my fib on here, and I was waiting for price to kind of come to that 50, 61.8 zone. That's typically like my favorite zone to enter. But it's also because if you look, this was kind of like our break-in structure. So this was like the last high, really more so on the M15 than M30. But this was like a high that was broken, so price could come back and retest that before continuing. So that's also why I was waiting for price to kind of pull back to that area. And we can see here, we got the pullback, we got wick rejection. So that was confirmation for me to go ahead and get into the buy. Stop loss below the last lows by like 20, 25 pips. Target was actually the minus 27, so it could be like a one-to-one trade. Um, I typically like two or better. But like with that first target, first TP, it tends to be about a one-to-one. But my overall target was to the next zone. So that's the setup I was looking for. Um, that setup did not happen. And so let's talk that through. Um, so I got in, had a little drawdown, then we had a nice push up, another nice push, and I was like, okay, we're moving in the right direction. But then price kind of basically failed to break the last high point zone that we had identified here, that I had identified. Price was not making higher highs. We were making higher lows, yes, but higher highs, no. We were making equal highs at this point. So price kind of consolidated that whole day. And because price was really failing to break that high, I decided to just, go ahead and close most of my position. I didn't necessarily move my stop to break even. Should have I was making a lot of trade errors last week, but again, I was traveling because like I said, I'm at my mom's and I'll be traveling to go back soon. But or preparation for traveling really. Um I tightened my stop a little bit below the last low. Um and then I also drew another trend line because I'm a trend line girly. You only need 2 points to draw a trend line. So I used this point down here. And then this was my second point and I extended it out. And so my thought process was this. If price breaks above these high points and actually creates a higher high, then I'm all gung ho for the buy. I'm ready to hop into the buy. But if price breaks this trend line to the downside, back below this 4 hour zone, then I'm no longer looking for the buys. I'm going to look for a sell opportunity and I'm going to take advantage of the sell because price is not making higher highs anymore. And then there was also bearish divergence forming. So we can see it here on the M30. There was also some divergence on the I believe the 1 hour as well. Just slight divergence, but there was divergence on the 1 hour as well. Um, so seeing the divergence, seeing that price wasn't really making higher highs, we're making like equal highs. All of that had me like, okay, I really thought we were gonna buy this week, but we could see a sell happening. Um, so I waited until the next morning because this is like Tuesday night before Wednesday. And then I did talk about the news of the US and Iran signing their agreements as far as war goes. But I didn't mention FOMC, which was on Wednesday. FOMC was really big because um there's a new Fed chair. So was the Fed chair for a really long time. Now there's a new Fed chair. I need to learn his name. I only know Powell's name because he was the Fed chair for so long. But there was a new Fed chair, and this was his first FOMC meeting. So it was really important, really big news, and I forgot to mention that, so I do apologize. But that had a big impact on the market as well. So I'm gonna let this play out. Price really just consolidated for a little bit. And I think that night we really started to see some pushing. Again, all of this I'm asleep. So I didn't see any of this happen until I woke up, which was around here, right? So I woke up, I noticed that price had already broke my trend line. It broke back below my zone. Again, these were things I was looking for if I were to get into a sell. So I was like, okay, if price is retesting this area, then I'll go ahead and enter in for a sell. Um, Stop loss a little bit above the last highs, so a little bit above the zone, which was like about 20 pips. And then my targets, my main target was this blue zone, right? Because that is the next zone. But I did have a swing, and it's funny that I had a swing this day. Um, I typically have a swing for all my trades. It's always small, but I always have a trade that I'm like, if it could go far, how far could it go? So for this, if it could go far, how far could it go? I just used the last low point as my target. I didn't want to necessarily use the next zone, just because if price came here and bounced, it would make sense. So that was my swing overall, but again, my main target was this area. So yeah, this was my overall target. I did enter before FOMC. Um, so we could let this play now. Price did pull back a little further, but overall we respected this zone. So I was good to go. FOMC was at 2 p.m. So we'll see price kind of consolidated a little bit and then price took off. And it's funny because I even noted mentally that price could break and retest this zone. And if we saw that, that could be like another potential entry. On the N15, you can see we broke and retested. And I saw that happening. I considered getting in, but I was like, nah, because I didn't want to be greedy. Um, so price did end up, where was my overall target? Let me go to the higher time frame. The surprise went to my overall target. I think I caught about 90 pips from that move overall. This was a reaction to FOMC, so it really gave a big push in the market. Wasn't expecting it. Again, I was looking for buys, but you have to follow market structure. You could have a bias, but you can't predict the market. You have to let the market kind of tell you what it's going to do. Um, so it's really, really important to understand market structure. Um, I'm gonna go ahead and exit replay mode. That was it for last week. So I'm happy that that ended up playing out well. I'm gonna get rid of the extra stuff. And we're going to talk about what I'm looking for this week, which will be brief. Basically, I have a sell bias. I know it was like I had the buy bias last week and the sell bias this week. But what really forms my bias is price has finally broken out of my 4-hour consolidation zone, which was this orange box. We have been in this zone since I believe June of last year. Yeah, somewhere around June of 2025. Now we're kind of finally breaking out of this zone. And so I have a sell bias. But I do believe we could see price pull back before this sell continues. I mean, we've already had a really big drop um just from here. This was about like a 220 pip move. Um, so that's a really big drop. So I'm expecting a pullback of some sort. The thing is, I just don't know how far of a pullback. Because we just broke out of this consolidation zone, I could see price coming back to kind of retest this consolidation zone. The furthest I see it coming back is maybe to this higher time frame trend line. Um, but I just see a pullback and then continuation. Um, My sell target really was this 13,525, which is the 0 on the 4 and I believe the 1. And price could drop there first before starting to pull back. So I did want to point that out because we're kind of hanging out at the 1 right now. So we could get a pullback and then a drop here, or we could see the drop here first and then the pullback. Um, so okay, I'm not rushing it. I'm taking this very zone by zone, step by step. But I need a trend line break before anything else. Why I am expecting a pullback is really just the divergence. This whole structure is a diverging structure. So that's just signaling that the selling momentum is slowing down does not automatically mean we're going to get a reversal. This can diverge as much as it wants to, so it could keep on forming a divergent structure and keep getting lower. And this could just keep diverging as long as it wants to. So you need other confirmations to confirm that, okay, it is actually starting to pull back. So the first thing I'm looking for is this trend line break. The next thing I would want to see is a break-in structure of some sort because it is really strong selling market structure going on. Um Lower time frame breaker structure would be this high here. That's like an M15. Higher time frame, like M30, would be like this high here. So depending on where you enter. So like if you enter on the lower time frame breaker structure, I would just target this zone, right? Because price could bounce from this zone and then start to sell. Um, if we happen to break that zone, then I would be trading to here, right? Again, price could come here and reverse. Um, but if we get a break of this previous high on the M30, then I'm targeting basically this major zone, right? So again, it could pull back to any of these levels. Not sure which level is going to pull back to. I'm not even sure if it's going to pull back right now or later. Price has been consolidating here for a while. So I'm just waiting to see how it's going to react. We do have to also keep out or keep our eyes and ears out for the news as far as like the US Iran treaty goes because they agreed, then they disagreed, now they're coming to terms again. It's a lot of back and forth. So I really hope they get that sorted out soon. Um, but again, the furthest I could see it coming is back to this trend line, and that's only if we break back above this 4-hour zone. then I would take it to the trend line. But I wouldn't be expecting a pullback further than that. Then I'm gonna be looking for my sales. I'm not looking for sales in this area just because the RSI is so oversold. So I want to see the pullback happen first. So if the sell ends up like it just drops from here, it just drops from here. I'm not getting in or looking for any entries. I need that pullback to happen first. How do I know when it's time to get in for the sell? Uh, click the wrong button. I need the pullback to happen, right? So I need something like this. Just enough for me to draw another trend line. Once that trend line is established, then I'm looking for sell entries once that trend line is broken, once a zone is broken, then that's when I'm looking for my sell entry. So I need that pullback to happen first before I get into any sells. Um, if I don't see a pullback, then I'm just not getting an entry. I'll just be patient. Because you never want to you don't want to sell at the bottom. You don't want to buy at the top, right? You want to make sure you're getting a premium price. And so for me, if I'm going to get in for the sell, I need that pullback to happen first because there's no telling how far this is going to go. And RSI is already telling me that momentum is not on my side. So I rather wait. I would even rather wait for the RSI like to pull back up to the top, and then I might consider looking for some sales. But right now, it's just not it. I do have a sell bias, but I do need to see that pullback happen first. Um, oops. Okay. So that's it. That's like all I have for you guys. If you have any questions, please leave them down in the comments. I will make sure to get back to you. I read the comments, I try to reply. I do have some mindset videos for you guys that I've been working on. I have a how to break bad habits video coming out. I also have a you're closer to consistency than you think. That's going to be coming out soon, and then I have another moments with a Maya that I've been working on. So I've been working on a lot of stuff. It's just been hard to trying to find a quiet corner to record these videos. But I really want to get this out to you to really break down what I discussed last week and how things ended up changing midweek. Um, so yeah, I hope you guys have enjoyed. Make sure you like, comment, and you subscribe to come back for more. That's it for today, and I will see you guys in the next video.